Hello and welcome, I'm Liam the Music Reviewer. Does anyone want to buy this copy of Ratchet and Clank free off me? Anyone? And today we're going to talk about the latest album by Troye Sivan, Bloom. Troye Sivan, if you didn't know, a YouTube personality, actor and surprise musician who has been making he mainly dabbles in like pop singer-songwriter, has been making tunes since he was 12 years old, I believe. Pretty admirable. Though granted, I haven't listened to any of his early material. In fact, the only bit of his material other than this album that I've listened to was one single off his last album. I think it was called Blue Neighborhood, his debut. That single being Youth, which didn't really care for at all. A lot of music comes out every year. When this lead single didn't really have me all that enticed, and I haven't really listened to that artist prior, didn't really get me all that invested to do so. I found Troy's delivery just being a bit sort of lethargic. Yeah, it was kind of like the big thing that just stopped me really getting into stuff. But I heard a lot of good things about this album. People like LP Club and other people on Twitter really like saying how good it was, how it was one of the best pop releases of the year, which yeah, it's pretty good praise to have. So I thought, hey, why not go into this album, see what it's like. Now with Bloom, it could still make could make a believer out of me, yeah. Considering the fact that on nearly every level imaginable, the title track Bloom is just a bop. It is so good. It's just dripping with like unsubtle innuendos. Troy's delivery just matching the setting far better this time, with these like gasps and teasing being like a common sight, and it's just, like I say, a finely crafted pop tune. The fluidity, the delicateness and the sultriness of the accompanying guitars and synths just means this song in general just wears its like sexuality, transparency with pride, and it's just all the better for it. Intimacy in general seems to be like one of the big themes on Bloom, which isn't anything new, and sadly, despite the fact that Troye is one of the few contemporary gay musicians who's very open about his sexuality, both in the public eye and in his music, it's a shame that nothing ever really interesting gets done with it, because it would be quite a sort of refreshing album to touch on that. Though of course there's other hip hop releases that have touched more in that sort of vein over the past 2 years, so yeah, at least there's those ones. But it's just a shame because at points it seems like maybe Troy is going to go in an interesting direction, but some of the metaphors he uses just don't really lead anywhere. They're fairly shallow. There's this whole thing about fruit that's mentioned on about 3 different tracks, and by the second time you're just kind of like, okay, we get it. It seems like it could have been like a really good sort of like narrative thread, but like really it just didn't like feel like it was all that well thought out. I did feel sort of like an afterthought. And it's not really helped by the fact that I feel like while Troy's delivery isn't really bad at any points, the problems I had with when I first listened to him aren't completely void. I think especially on the song What a Heavenly Way to Die, he just doesn't really feel that invested as the lyrics would imply he is, which just in the end like really undermines that track in general, among other things. That's not to say he's like consistently disappointing in the vocal department though. The song My 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 really does like pack more of a punch. It's clearly 1975 influence with that whole electro pop sound. I know they didn't invent it, but like in terms of like what's popular just now, it's you can very much tell that the producers behind this were wanting to tap into that. But yeah, the whole gang vocals at the chorus really do like amp up this sort of feeling that Troy's trying to talk about, with how when you're just like really infatuated with somebody. Like he really does word himself quite well, and have to admit that sometimes there's like some really like poignant lyrics, especially on our songs. But in this song particularly that we're talking about, yeah, I did really like the chorus to a certain extent. I do think that there's some like sort of like cliche chart elements, which just don't feel all that at home. You know, like the ooh and the like the really like mumbly deep vocoding that just, yeah, I've always found really jarring, and they just feel like they were added just to like give it some sort of like some more weight when it comes to being a chart song. But really it would have been better without it. It just doesn't feel all that necessary. There's also the song Dance to This, another one where I just feel like Troy did a good job in terms of how he was presenting himself. He just seems really confident and cocky on it, but not in a way that feels like not in a way that like annoys you at all. And you really do need to sort of like present that confidence when you have the featured artist on this song, Ariana Grande. They both work off each other really well. Even even though there isn't any sort of like real sort of like relationship going on there, considering like they've both been very public about their respective partners, like they sell it very well. That whole sort of infatuation is just really well sold. And just it's really sort of satisfying how both like the on a lyrical level and just in sort of like delivery production wise, they just sort of intertwine with each other, which is something that made me quite dig this song, made me want to come back to it on repeated listens. However, the most compelling Troye is in this entire album is without a doubt the song Postcard, which isn't, in terms of like composition, and that isn't really anything I haven't heard before. It's pretty like basic, like you kind of like expect like the piano, bass and whatnot. But that's not to say that it's a total write-off, because it really is a song that's like sort of made by like Troye's heart, by what he's like spilling on here, and it's basically just about someone who you love, but you like kind of like in the honeymoon phase where you start to realise maybe that they're not as perfect. It doesn't mean that they're a bad person at all, but it just it can be something as meaning with the story behind this, about a partner who didn't go and pick up a postcard and then eventually lost it and all that. It's a really tiny thing, but like it is those tiny things that make you realise that like that anyone that we love is flawed, but like you love them for those flaws. But this is like sold in a really serious manner, and yeah, I don't know, like I think maybe at points I feel like it could have done things a bit better. I don't think Gordy, who makes an appearance on this, really felt all that necessary. At the bridge it's sort of lovely, but like when she's singing at the same time as Troye, I don't feel like they're like one's really boosting the other at all. I really think Troye's stealing the show, so I didn't really feel that necessary. I didn't hurt my enjoyment, my appreciation of this track. But I do think there's like a few things that were like bringing it down from being like truly great, but I did still enjoy the song. And sorry for harking on about delivery and whatnot for so long, but this is definitely an album that's made by the person in question who's singing, so it seems silly not to talk about stuff like the delivery and whatnot to the extent that I have so far. I think it's worth discussing the production on this album as well, which isn't really groundbreaking or rocking the boat at all. It's just, your electro pop, synth pop sound, but it's not in the same vein as something like Emotion or The Bones of What You Believe. It's more like I've kind of hinted at before. It's more kind of like I Like It When You Sleep, that sort of like more moody pop. Really, there's nothing that's ever done with it that's made me go, oh, that's really nice. Like it's usually quite decent most of the time. Well, there is a one song, The Good Side, where I feel like something's done with it that does make it like something that I'm willing to like hear out and like get myself sort of invested in. And it's mainly because it seems like Troy's starting to like mix these like OPN and Bon Iver influences. The Bon Iver one's coming from just how like kind of like heartbroken and guitar led, as much in the same vein as something like Forever Ago. And then there's like the vocoder and reverb elements, which aren't necessarily like solely done by 22 Million, but that's what it reminded me of most, which I thought like was a nice mix. And then the OPN stuff, I'm not the biggest fan of them, but like from the stuff that I have heard, my limited experience with them, there's just like especially the synths and the string arrangements sound quite similar to something that I heard on the album from this year, Age Of. It gives it sort of like a classic feel, but at the same time makes it feel sort of like modern in that, which is it just made me feel utterly content. And the most content I felt was when it got to the end, and that's not because I edited that. It sounds like a really snidey remark, but like because it's like a really moody end, and it feels like it's letting everything that's been said sort of like rest and really sink in, which I thought was like quite a good direction to go in. As the album draws to an end, I do feel like production wise it just started to sort of like falter a bit, especially with the songs What Heavenly Way to Die and Animal, which feel very Frank Ocean-esque to me. And I'm sorry for the constant comparisons, but that's just how we process our enjoyment of music, I guess. And yeah, like they're not painfully bad, or they don't even feel like, oh, this sounds too much like this, but it's not as good as it. It's just more like I can definitely see what Troye was trying to accomplish with this. I'm love when I think it comes to the whole 1975, so I think he usually kind of like sells it sort of well, like not that 1975 made that or anything like I said before. But the Frank Ocean stuff, it feels like he kind of gets it, but at the same time doesn't get it, and that's because on these songs the delivery isn't really anything like worth writing home about. And the thing is, whenever Frank Ocean is singing, like he's giving it 100%, like it feels utterly like effortlessly beautiful in that, but it still feels like maybe Troy's a bit too. I don't know if he's like if he's able to, or if maybe he's just still a bit too like timid to really push himself forward, because I really do think there's this guy has got a really good album in him, and a lot of people probably think this is a really good album, or the one before was a really good one, but like I can just tell that like there's something stopping him, and I think if he just kind of like went all in with some of these deliveries and just some of these performances, like he would be making like a really like what probably would probably be very deserving of this like best pop record of the year accolade that many are giving them. But as far as I'm concerned, yeah, I feel like sometimes he's just not really giving it. Is all. I've sounded fairly negative throughout this review, but I'm really not on this album in general. I don't hate it and I don't dislike it. The title track is one of the best pop songs of the year. The Good Side, Postcard, Dance to This are all great, either for their delivery, for the production, or just for a bit of both. Just all in all, I'm just a bit kind of like surprised by this record, because I don't really have much history with Troye Sivan or his music, or had much of like enjoyment of it. And I did find myself liking this a lot more than I thought I would. I thought I'd be kind of a bit more negative on it, or just a bit more lukewarm towards it, but no, I do like a good wee bit of this album, but at the same time I do feel disappointed because I don't feel like it's going far enough. It feels like a lot of these songs could have been like improved just by little touches, especially just if Troy just directed himself a bit better, because I don't think he's incapable of like making a really great album. But as far as I'm concerned, I'm probably just going to come back to this album in like fragments more than anything. I'll just come back to the songs that I like, as opposed to go through the record as a whole. In terms of score, guys, I'm feeling a like 5 out of 10. If you guys have listened to this record, let me know what your favourite songs are, your least favourite songs, what you made of the album in general, and a score. I'm always interested in hearing what you guys had to think of it down in the comments down below. In addition to that, links to my social media, websites, all that fun stuff is in my bio. And yeah, thank you for watching, guys, and as always, stay safe and stay hydrated.